Welcome, everyone. I am John Ryan of SportsMemo.com. This is the NBA Triple-Double Show for May the 10th, 2022. And as always, I have my good friend and pal, Ronald Cabang, in the house. We're both doing pretty well in the NBA. Pretty well, like over 70%, despite I lost last night, having the under in the Bucks and the Celtics game. But it was one under. I'm still 14-4 with NBA totals. And you know me, Ron. I don't like to. I hate the sales part, to be honest. But I'm the $2 guy along with two other guys, and we'll talk about that later. But I have a 5% max bet today. Coincidentally, it's on $2 Tuesday, and you can get it for $2. And you also get a promo code to get 40% off my 3-pack of Major League Baseball and my NHL hockey, where I'm 5-1-1. Welcome to the show, Ronald. How are things treating you after yesterday?
Yeah, it was a tough. I had to me it was a little bit of a bad beat, but I had the first half on the Celtics. There's a couple
Sure
of things that
was.
went wrong. Yeah, a couple of things went wrong in the last couple of minutes there. I wouldn't blame the refs and the fouls called and that's all that stuff towards the end. I really the Celtics kind of just gave that away in the last couple of minutes. They had the lead. I thought that was a win going into the last couple of minutes. But yeah, it was a tough one there. But I did hit my prop with over rebounds on Derek White. So that was a pretty good way to end that game. But yeah. Oh, so far NBA playoffs overall through the whole playoffs doing really well. So can't complain.
Yeah, I did. The second game was bizarre because I managed to get the over at 193.5 in game. It's so hard to communicate that to clients. You almost have to be like texting me, and then how in the world am I
Yeah.
going to respond to? You can't create a group text of several hundred. Yeah, I don't know what to do about that. But anyway, that one barely won, though. I mean, it was only 197. I thought that was. I
Hmm.
thought it was a gift at the time, but it got a little weird there at the end.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
Memphis had them. Memphis had them right where they wanted them, and let
Yeah.
them off the hook.
Yeah. I mean, game script wise, it almost seemed like it went the way that it should have. To me, in my opinion, because obviously, like for me, like what I was looking at was how the Grizzlies did in the regular season without Ja, and obviously they covered really well. They won games without him as well, and but in this specific spot, it did seem like it was a position where or a game where we were going to see the Warriors win the game but not cover. So yeah, that's exactly how it
Yeah,
went. But yeah,
I saw you doing that on your show. Matter of fact, you were doing a like an educational case study, if you will, of like how you're telling people like, okay, here's how Memphis does without Morant in the lineup, but
yeah,
you have to look
mhm,
at the opponent. You just can't take
mhm.
the stats and say, okay, well they're 16-5 without him, so they'll do good tonight. I mean, you have to look at the opponents, which you did a
Yeah,
marvelous job with.
yeah.
So
I
that
mean
that was that
that
was great.
that kind of goes with the name of the show, right? Let's cap. It really
Yep.
is part. I mean, part of my show is really to help educate and kind of go through that thought process of capping the games. So yeah, I'm glad you caught that and that you thought that was really helpful because yeah, obviously you see Grizzlies record 20-5 straight up without him. But you see the teams that they played against for a majority of the time and also where they played. They played a lot of those games at home as favorites, and sometimes even as dogs. But in those situations, it's a lot different when you're on the road and a dog, right? And it also depends
Yeah.
on who you're playing with. So, yeah, a lot of things to think about in those spots. And people really just thought, oh, 20-5 straight up. I'm going to go money line, blah, 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 or whatever, So, yeah, I'm glad you caught that and that was helpful for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and it works the other way around too. As I always remember, Memphis was an 8.5 point road favorite at full strength in Philadelphia without Embiid in the lineup and before James Harden arrived. And guess who won? The 76ers won without Embiid. So, I mean, that's
Yeah.
to your point. You have to really be careful at how you look at some of these statistics and these angles. And we only try to give you guys the best that we feel is out there.
Hmm.
And you know what? Al Horford, the 35-year-old veteran, must have had every Philadelphia fan pissed off last night. But it was fun to watch. He was
It was
killing
very
my
fun.
under. He single handedly killed my under. but I don't throw things at the TV, and you got to learn to take these things in stride. But I mean, it was pretty cool to see him playing like he was. And then he got fired up, and I never seen him in his entire career with that kind of enthusiasm. But the point of bringing it up is that fed the whole team fed off of him, and that's leadership, in my opinion. It's not talking the talk on the when the mics are in your face. That was a true leadership game last night by Al Horford that could have monumental impact on that series.
Yeah.
So kudos to him. Even if you don't like the Celtics, you got to tip your hat to a guy that's 35 and played like he was 18. It's like watching a much bigger version of Maxey. With the enthusiasm and the smile, and well, a couple of times he wasn't smiling, but it's a rough series, and then he got a long way to go. But let's get right to the game today at hand. And of course, this is going to be a real slugfest down in Miami when the 76ers go down there to Miami Heat. And speaking of motivation, Ronald, Embiid has to be. I mean, I don't care. I would say the same thing. I would say, you know what? I'm about the team. I want a world championship. I don't care about the MVP. Privately, I would bet a large sum of money, at least one or two pizzas, that he's not real happy with this. And this could have created the vote against him could have actually created a real problem for the Miami Heat tonight. And I don't ever cross the line into emotional content or, the subjectivity end of handicapping. I like being totally objective like you and not having these factors enter the game, but I can't help myself with this thing. And that Embiid, he's had, more rest. That eye socket problem is healing. The concussion is gone. He has to be one motivated individual right now. So I want to hear what you have to say about this matchup and if the 76ers can win 3 in a row and take a 3-2 lead heading back to Philly.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because you think of it from a motivation standpoint. Obviously, Embiid is going to be really motivated to prove that he was the MVP, not Jokic. And the other thing too to think about though is it's not you can't just look at one team, right? You're just right now when you think of Embiid, you're only thinking one way, right? You're thinking of the Sixers. But if you look on the other side on the Heat, one thing to note today is Lowry. From what I've seen, he's out for today, right? One big thing is game 1 and game 2 at home. Lowry didn't play. Miami won both games. Lowry shows up game 3 and game 4 in Philly, and they end up losing these games. So what I wanted to look at was, it's an interesting fact, right? It's an interesting fact because you would think, Lowry is a household name. He should be able to help this team. Game 1 and game 2, Oladipo starts. Someone who hasn't been playing for the majority of the regular season comes into a starting lineup and makes an impact right away. And then you come into this one and, game 5, Lowry's now out at home. I don't know. Maybe he was trying to play through the injury, right? I believe it's a hamstring injury, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. So maybe that kind of hampered everything while he was playing in Philly. And now they're like, well, it's actually affecting you more than you thought. So we got to take you out again. So what I was looking at was how they do without Lowry during the playoffs. Offensively, they don't really miss a beat, but defensively is where the impact shows. 4-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread, and 3-1 to the under without Lowry, averaging 108, but allowing only 94 points per game. With him, 2-3 straight up and against the spread, 3-2 to the under, averaging 105.4 per game, allowing 104.4. So that's almost a 10-point gap between in points allowed between him playing and him not playing. So without him, they're playing a lot better defensively, and that could be a part of it. Is his hamstring injury, having to play through that. But in my opinion, Philly has gotten some momentum, and that this is kind of why I kind of shy away from the side here. But I would, if I was to play anything, I would lean towards the Heat. But defensively, I think this matchup just plays towards a slower pace. I know the last game went over, but a lot of things had to go right for it to go over. And they normally both play a slow pace, normally play solid defense. So for me, I would probably look towards the under more than anything here. Maybe a slight lean towards the Heat, but even then, I wouldn't feel confident enough to put money on it. So that's my take on this game here.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I shared the under with you. I think it's going to be very physical, and that is so ironic with Lowry out of the lineup, and they win both games. Granted, it was at home. You do tend to shoot better in the playoffs when you're at home because you're familiar surroundings. Um, and then they go on the road and they get him back, and he's basically been the quarterback of that offense all year long. And they lose, but then maybe it wasn't necessarily him, and that's what you're saying with your analytics. Embiid shows up, gets everybody riled up, and that offset Lowry's presence in the offensive scheme, I guess. But I know one thing tonight, even with to your point, even with Lowry out, I think it's going to be more physical than any game previous of the four, and it's going to be
Mhm.
slower paced. And Embiid's going to be touching that ball literally every single time down the court, whether he shoots it or not, or passes it off to Harden and the other perimeter shooters remains to be seen. But he'll react to what Miami wants to do. And
Mhm.
if they go one on one, he's going to score. If they double team him, that means somebody's going to be open, and he's very good at finding that open shooter, as we saw in game four. They shot 48%, 48.5% from threes. And Miami shot 20% from beyond the arc. So my question for you, Ronald, is pretty simple here. Um, how do you think teams respond from that kind of shooting? Do you think that there's more of a tendency, gee, Miami's a much better shooter than that shooting team? They're going to bounce back tonight with a much bigger percentage, possibly double the 20 and shoot 40%. Sixers are maybe prone to regression, and we may not want to count on 48.5% shooting from beyond the arc. Do you think there's any factors in that going into tonight?
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about like regression or I mean, so like well, I think a lot during the regular season when we did these shows, we always talked about, if a team is shooting well, like over 50%, right? And they normally shoot around 45 or 46% from the field, we would typically look towards a regression. Um, I mean, in the playoffs is always tough, right? Because all these um, the motivation is a little bit different in the playoffs than it is in the regular season. So, in my opinion, there's always ways to continue shooting well. I mean, obviously, like here it's a little bit different, right? Because there's travel involved and things like that. So there's just so many things to look at. But playoffs is just a different beast when you cap these games. So for me, I feel like there's less of a chance of regression. But it really just depends on the teams that you're looking at here, right? Because obviously defensively, you're gonna think Miami's gonna make the changes, and you're looking at the coaches like Spoelstra. He's one of the best,
Yeah.
adjusters, in-game adjusters there is in the game. So I mean, there's just so many things to think about in cap through the playoffs, and one thing to know, like I mentioned, it's just a lot different than it is in the regular season, especially when it comes to motivation.
Hey, that's a great point about Spoelstra. He was, I believe, it was 2 seasons ago. He was voted one of the greatest coaches of all time NBA, top 15, not 50, top 15, and well deserving. And if you do like Miami tonight, I just found a Spoelstra angle here that's pretty good. 144, 113 against the number after failing to cover the spread in two or more consecutive games as the head coach of the Miami Heat. So to
Mhm.
your point, he makes the adjustments and he's very good at halftime too. And that's where I think Doc Rivers is underrated as a coach because he just keeps getting bashed by the press whenever it's the playoffs. But I do think they have to be very cognizant of any adjustments that Spoelstra makes in the first 2 minutes of that third period.
Mhm.
Because if Miami is trailing, you can bet that there's going to be some pretty big changes going into the third quarter by the Heat. And lastly, what do you think about my newfound system of if the dog is winning at the halftime and it's on the road, you bet the favorite in game for the outright win? You think that could apply to tonight's game, or the Sixers come in there a little bit relaxed because they don't have to win? They know they're
Mhm.
going back to Philly and can force a game seven. And maybe Miami's a little tight in that first half. Sixers get out
Mhm.
to a lead. They lead at the half, but then Miami gets their act together and wins the game. Do you think that's
Mhm.
a possibility tonight?
That's definitely a possibility, especially with obviously the Sixers bringing in the momentum from the previous game. Um, it really is I don't doubt that it could happen. I mean, it's happened multiple times already this regular season. One thing to know is how we've been viewing the lines, right? Who sometimes the favorites full game are actually dogs at half. Those certain situations that we see is something that's been coming up often, especially this playoffs. So it's just something to know. And then yeah, I could definitely see Sixers leading at half and the Heat coming back to win the game outright. It's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, Ninja 13, thanks for sending this to us. Heat first quarter, 76ers first half. I personally would think that if the Heat win the first quarter, that they're going to be ahead at halftime. I don't. It's awful difficult in a game five to come back. If say Miami's up 5, 6, 7 points at the end of the first quarter to actually have the lead at halftime. Um, but anything's possible, Ninja. I mean, that's why we have these shows, and that's why it's so much fun. But thanks for sharing that with us. And now we're going to get over here to the second game, which is a game that I'm having a little bit of trouble with, especially with the total. It's the Mavericks and the Suns. And boy, did the Dallas Mavericks and their fans have fun. Mark Cuban was having fun there on the floor, running around. And it is mostly enjoyable to watch. I didn't like it when I found out that Chris Paul's family was more or less, I guess, kind of mauled a little bit. But
Yeah,
thank goodness there was no like violence or anything. It might have been a young kid just saying, hey, you're losing, you're getting killed. It could have been
yeah,
anything like that. We don't really know, but nevertheless, I think there'll be fewer smiles on Doncic's face tonight, and I think there'll be fewer smiles by hashtag MFL Mavs fans for life, which that's pretty cool hashtag actually. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I think it's 4 letters, and it's like "Let's go Mets" hashtag LGM. But anyway, in this matchup, Ronald, I gotta be siding to the over initially here because I think the way the Phoenix Suns respond from some really bad officiating on both sides, but mostly it was affecting the Suns in that game. I think they just come out hard and fast against the Mavericks and try to take them out of the game early. That pretends to the over, in my opinion. But let's see what you have to say about this matchup.
yeah. I actually, this is one game that I have actually a premium play on, a 3% premium play on this one. Specifically though, in the first quarter, I see an advantage here on one team over the other. But as far as the series goes, and this game, full game, this series is 2-2. Both teams took care of business at home. I think this trend continues. I like the Suns to win this game outright. But I think the full game spread is pretty tough. I think this is a line where the Suns could win and not cover the game. Trend wise, I think it's something that Dallas has been doing, all season in this specific spot, 5-10 straight up, but 10-5 against the spread as road dogs in conference games against teams with a winning record. On the other side, 7-2 straight up, but just 4-5 against the spread this season as home favorites in conference games against teams with a winning record. So both ways, it kind of goes where trend wise, I could see both from both sides. The Suns winning and Dallas covering the spread. I just feel like it's really tight. The line is really tight where it is right now. The reason why I would actually lean towards the Suns full game though is because of how they do avenging double-digit losses. They're 7-1 straight up and against the spread in those situations this season. To me, I think that would be the way I would go from a side perspective. I didn't put money on that play specifically, but that would be the lean for me. As far as total goes, I do agree with the over 215. It makes sense to me the way that they've been playing offensively. Both teams have been playing offensively. So and coming back to the road in Phoenix. Obviously Mavs are more of an under team at home and more of less of an under team on the road. So that's another thing going in that direction as well. So yeah, if I were to bet full game, I would lean towards the Suns on the over.
Hey, I like that. I like that over quite a bit, actually. And I'm going to share a couple angles here, real quick, and a little live in-game betting. Phoenix 24-1 to the over in home games when facing a team that's outscoring their opponents by 3 or more points per game in games played over the last 2 seasons. They are also a near perfect 11-1 over in home games facing teams that average 7 or fewer steals per game when the game is played in the second half of a season in each of the last 2 seasons. So there you have two angles supporting the over that have gone 31-6. Now, in the in-game stuff that I just absolutely love to do, this is a game that's going to be volatile. You're going to have runs probably by both teams of 10 or more points, and you got to take advantage of it. You're going to be buying into weakness, selling into strength, just like the stock market now. We went down very, very hard on Monday. Then we had the bounce back today, the Tuesday counter trend rallies, they call it. What happens the rest of the week, we don't know, but we want to be buying into dips, so to speak. And the same thing applies to these NBA games. So in this total, where it's at, if you like the over like Ronald and I do, then you want to take a shot at getting a 2-0 number. So we're at Ron, what is the line right now currently? What is it,
For the
like
full game,
215 and a half? Yeah, for the Suns.
I see 215 on the total.
Yeah. Okay. So what I've done is I have it's a rather complex calculation that's used in option trading on Wall Street, and it's called implied volatility. And it basically calculates what is the range going to be for a certain time period for that underlying option based on the stock. The same thing can be said with the NBA total. So I've tweaked that calculation. And when I calculate it based on the recent games and how these games have been played out, literally play by play, they can go from scoring 3.5 points per minute for 3 minutes, or they can go up to as high as 8 points per minute for 3 minutes. And those are basically the ranges. So when you approach those ranges, especially in this game on the downside, you want to be betting the over in game when you've gone through a period where it looks like they're playing in the mud. And you, based on these calculations, at 215, I'm going to go recommendation here 50% pre-flop at 215. I'm going to add 25% at 209 and a half. I'm going to add 25% more at 206 and a half. And that's only for the first half of the game. When you get into the third and the fourth quarter, think about it. You have to be right almost immediately, or you don't have enough time to have it work out for you. So you only do these for the first half. The worst thing that happens is they get out to a barn burner type of game and you don't get the other pieces on. But that also means and implies that you're winning that 50% over bet no matter what. So I hope that made sense. If you have any questions, just let me know. So let me get back to the main screen here, Ronald. So now we're on to our best bet segment. And I think I pretty much made a pretty good, strong case for a best bet already. So why don't I run with that? The over in game, 50% pre-flop, and then the numbers that I mentioned for the 25% and 25%, which were 209.5 and 206.5. What is your best bet?
Yeah, for me, I think I'm gonna look towards that first game with the under Sixers and the Heat. I think even though what the total is at 209.5, I believe, right? I just feel like
Yep.
the defenses are going to show up. Obviously, the fact that Lowry is out and Miami plays a little bit a better defense without him so far in the playoffs, I think that's going to play a part here. And obviously, they continue playing the slow pace. So to me, all the signs are pointing towards the under in that Sixers Heat game.
Yep, I agree with you. We have one little question here from Ninja 13. Chris Paul prop over 16 and a half. I have to assume that's points and not points and assists, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
actually have that up on the screen yet. But
Mm-hmm.
you think Chris Paul? I expected Chris Paul to have a monster game in the last game, but I'm not going to blame the refs for anything. However, he was pretty much taken out of the game with the early foul trouble, which seriously, how often has that happened to him in his career? So that game, it was both sides had to suffer the consequences of some questionable calls by the refs. It wasn't one sided. but it did
Mhm.
impact Chris Paul. I gotta think he plays a much better game tonight, whether the Suns win or lose. Do you agree with that? And if so, then I
Yeah,
think points and assists is probably the bet.
yeah. So I'm looking here at the you want could I share my screen?
Uh,
Uh,
it's a good question. I'm not
I mean I
sure.
can, but I'm asking you if you okay with
Yeah,
me
go ahead.
doing
Go
that.
ahead. If you think
Okay,
you can share it, go ahead and try to
go
share
ahead
it.
and go and hit that share
Ah, yes, I see
down
it.
there.
Okay,
Yeah,
you want me to add that to the stream?
yep. Go ahead and do that.
There we
So I
go.
just want to show this is Edge House here. One of the tools I use for player props. So I brought up Chris Paul's points props here. And one thing to note is he's only hit the 16 and a half in 4 of the last 7 games. But if you look at here, sorry, the screen isn't fitting perfectly, but I just want to show that he hit this number at home, 19 and 28 at home. Then obviously on at home on the road in Dallas, we always talk about how Dallas is a better defensive team at home, and you could kind of see that here with a 12-5 game on the road. Coming back home, I'm expecting them to play a little bit better offensively. So I mean, for me, even though he's only hit it in 4 of the last 7, coming back home to Phoenix against this Dallas team, I can kind of see this happening here. Obviously, if you see a 12-5 game and you get a line at 16 and a half, it's kind of telling you a little bit of a story here. So in my opinion, I'm not personally taking it, but the way it looks like, it seems like it's the right bet to do it here as they come back home in Phoenix.
Yeah, that's great stuff, Ron. I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, that's what it's all about right there, folks. I mean, that was good. We did that on the fly. That wasn't even planned. That made it even better. But I just looked up Chris Paul for Ninja and the rest of the people in the chat room here. 25 and a half points and assists, minus 105. I think we both kind of like that for a pizza bet. And the other one I do like is Michael Bridges, prop bet. I've been riding him, and every time I seem to play him, Ronald, he gets my text messages and he responds. It's just amazing. I'm kidding, of course. But I was just looking at it. Well, you never know. There could be somebody, if I don't smile. Tony Finn has told me this. You got to smile if you're kidding. You can't use dry humor all the time because somebody actually might believe that you're actually texting a player, and that's never a good thing. But anyway,
Yeah.
uh, Michael Bridges, 16 and a half, minus 105 points and assists. I like him again tonight.
Mhm.
He just seems to be just doing the role and excelling at it. Anyway, this has been a great show, Ronald. Appreciate everybody that's in the chat room here. If we didn't give you a shout out, let's see what this guy says. How about them Mavs, huh? Well, yeah. Yeah, now they have to go to the road and what is that? The real DJX 214. 214 must be the area code because that's the Dallas area, Fort Worth area code is 214. But they got their work cut
Now it
out
makes a lot
tonight.
of
But
sense.
yeah, it does, doesn't it? I'm pretty quick. I mean, sometimes I amaze myself. However, I think going on the road here, the Mavericks are going to have a little bit more of a challenge, and that crowd is going to be fired up, of course, to show the Mavs fans that they are better. And that's a kind of a competition that goes on during the NBA playoffs as well. Anyway, it's come to the end of the show. Make sure you guys get over to sportsmemo.com every day. Take advantage of the discounts. Like I said, we're the $2. I'm the $2 guy today. And Ronald is also running at about a 73% clip in the NBA. Hockey, I'm doing well. It's purely the analytical models I run is 5-1-1. So we're enjoying that quite a bit. So take advantage of the discounts, get on board, and we'll all have a lot of fun. So we'll be back again on Wednesday, hopefully with some great sweeping results from our cards for another edition of the NBA Triple Double Show. And until then, remember the two things. Bet with your head, not over it, and may all the wins be yours.